Is day 1098. 1098 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And remember that El Paso, Texas, Fort Bliss is a very important installation because it is the sister city, the Siamese sister city of Juarez, Mexico. And this is, let's not take our eye off that. I'm going on to Facebook right now to see if I'm on and if everything is working and if everyone can hear me. Thank you so much. Seems that it's all working. Okay. Okay, so I just put up a TikTok also about the events of today. Every day it's something new. Like I said, we received a copy of a letter today that was sent to the commanding general there on Fort Bliss, Major General James Eisenhower. And it led to a lot of questions because that letter was from um, the chief of security, the director of emergency services, Thomas Kane. And it just raised a lot of questions because he has admitted that Fort Bliss is working outside of the law and that they're criminal and that they are using retaliation as a weapon. Okay, and that is really huge for this case, but it doesn't mean that Thomas Kane wasn't part of it. You see, this is why the discussion was so big today, talking with Team Fine Richard Halliday about the events that unfolded today and, our criminal complaints, all of our criminal complaints that we have put in, and the conflicts of interest. I think the conflicts of interest are absolutely stunning, stunning. They would make you, uh, when you know the conflicts of interest here, it's hard to believe. You become speechless, and it's hard to believe because, see, Tom Kane, not only was he in charge of the security of Fort Bliss and the surveillance videos, and let me see, I wrote down all the notes of what he is in charge of, um, because to get that clearance to come on, that security clearance to come onto Fort Bliss, you have to go through him. Okay, access to Fort Bliss is through the DEA, the Director of Emergency Services, the DES. And the other thing that we wanted to discuss, in Team Fine Richard Halliday, is that he was there at that meeting with the 15 plus agents. Um, was he there? I believe he was there at that stage Task Force 5 Richard Halliday. And if he was there, because we believe he was there, we're trying to remember, we're trying to go through all of our notes, DES, DEA, all of those alphabet of the 15 plus agencies. And of course, he would be invited to that Task Force 5 Richard Halliday because he's the one that can release the surveillance videos. right? Uh, knows who comes in and out of the gates on Fort Bliss. So that was very, very important for him to be there. And, you know, what is so heartbreaking and cold blooded in all of this is you have a family that has a missing son or daughter, and our agencies at the chain of command, the system takes advantage of the family because they never called us. Okay, so 36 days went by. We're wondering, oh, do we want to go and call the captain? What do you think, dear? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to call his captain unless I get really, really desperate. Um, you know, so Rob decided to call the captain um, to say, hey, we haven't heard from our son. Where is he? Not even, there was not even a thought in our mind that our son was murdered, was dead, was missing, was whatever. There was not a thought, and that the military would not call us, that the unit would not contact us. You see, that, if he was out in the civilian world, then I would have worried so much more about him. But because he was living in the barracks on a secured military installation that he had to report daily to, it's the same thing with Caleb Smithers' mother. She never dreamed that she had to worry that the military would just let her son lay there dead day after day after day until the fifth stage of decomposition in the barracks where they're spraying Febreze, right? They're spraying Febreze. Eh, she didn't she never dreamed that the military would do something like that. And that was our case too. And in those 36 days, you know, one thing that has become very clear in this letter that Thomas Kane wrote, and that it's in our possession, is that they're not following procedures. They're not following um, their own regulations, right? They're working outside of the law, and they're up to no good. They're up to no good, and we know that from all of the latest news and events that they try to twist and turn in the media, and the things that don't get put into the media because because there's a cover up, right? And with all of that happening, I lost my train of thought. Um, so much crime is happening that the only solution, the only way you could put this together is with the conflicts of interest, right? That they're emboldened. They have a sweet deal. They had a sweet deal going on. They had this kind of absolutely sex going on, fraud, waste, and abuse. But they also had investments, illegal investments, offshore investments. They had the weapons smuggling. They had the narcotics dealing. They had the bringing the girls in to be prostituted out. They had the child pornography, or all the pornography. This was a real, and they're engaged in affairs after affairs, and then they also, so many of them have declared bankruptcy. This whole, and then so many of them, you would think that that would make them happy, but they're not. They're totally miserable. And so, and several of them uh, declared to me that they were mentally ill, that they had to have medication and things like this. And so they're so angry. That's a telltale sign that there is collusion and corruption and illegality and a threat to their position, a threat to, you know, uh, their retirement. And they're very, very angry. How dare you, right? How dare you not let us cover up the murder and the dismemberment of your son? How dare you not let us do that? You know, it's like, no, no, um, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to let you get away with the murder and the dismemberment of my son. So you can continue being up to no good with your affairs that create connections. They have a lot of connections, and these connections, a lot of them are sexual. Okay? It's like a sex cult. And that sex cult is, and they have a lot of them are LDS. And so I've asked several times the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, I've asked them to do their own investigation into their membership. They're involved in Find Richard Halliday, and they know who they are. They know who they are. Uh, so, they could get to the bottom of this because that's a powerful element in this. And several. And the more we find out, the more it comes to light that they have this common denominator. And it emboldens them. If they're having an affair with someone that is working as the chief of security of Fort Bliss and the director, because it's dual hatted, I guess, director of emergency service, and then triple hatted because then it involves Park University. Um, so, and those that are at Park University. And things were going on that were not right, y'all. They were just not right. And I hope you understand. I hope you can read between the lines. Um, but they are absolutely involved in this, doing favors for each other, because then they are involved with the children, overseeing the children of the emergency intake center, of all the children that are on Fort Bliss, then involved in CPS, then they're involved in JAG, then they are involved in the command, then they are involved in the AUSAs, then they're and, and then they're involved in the media there. And people, one thing that I've heard over and over again is, how could something like this be covered up? How could there be that kind of collusion? Well, we've been uncovering it. We've been uncovering that in the CID we have conflicts of interest, not just one, several, but even in dealing with the children, even within CPS, there's conflicts of interest. And then the other law enforcement, even with the security of Fort Bliss, there's conflicts of interest. Even within the JAG, there's conflicts of interest. Even within the command, there's conflicts of interest. And this is just um, absolutely a web of collusion and criminal activity and sex cult. I'm just going to tell you right now, you can't help um, you can't get away from it. If you're looking into Dallas Hart, you're going to, it's going to slap you in the face, the sex cult part of it, right? The abuse, the sexual abuse, is going to slap you right in the face. If you are looking into Leilani Hart, you're absolutely going to be slapped right in the face with the deception of sexual favors, right? Um, and there's more, right? And you can't help but look when you're looking into, and this is what's shocking, the the law enforcement, it slaps you right in the face, the sexual deception, the sexuality of it all. So the morality is has broken down. Morality in the system has broken down. And that is why Richard and so many other volunteer sons and daughters who join the military get to their unit, especially Richard's unit there at Delta Battery 143, Air Defense Artillery. Uh, when they get there, there is no esprit de corps. They're sex cults, right? There's grooming. There is illegal drugs. There is cooking the books because of weapons and equipment smuggling, and also ammunition smuggling. And when you have someone that's connected to flying, right? So you have the flying, you have the JAG, you have the CPS in your pocket, you have the command in your pocket, you have the CID in your pocket. Is the El Paso police in their pocket too? I mean, uh, you know, eh, that's not a crazy question for me at this point. When I know that we have connections with all these other agencies and that they were sitting there, I finally got my train of thought back, and I wanted to talk about the Task Force Find Richard Halliday meeting that General Conville, God has a great sense of humor. He's a con man. He's at best, he's a con man, but he's worse. He's the worst type of enemy. He's the worst type of criminal because he's wearing our uniform, and he is demanding, he thinks he deserves respect. He thinks he deserves that uniform. He thinks he deserves the 4 stars and all of the ribbons that he wears on his uniform on his chest. And he deserves that he has the large staff that he has, and he thinks that he deserves the transportation that he gets on our dime. Everything is on our dime. Everything. He laughs in our face. He laughs in our face because he has committed crimes against humanity, and he puts together a stage task force find Richard Halliday just to check a box or to placate the family, but there's no op board. They have discussed everything before we even got there. Y'all, they had 36 days, and things were happening in those 36 days. Remains were found. There was a confession. There was a lot of top secret discussions on how to handle the dismemberment murder of a whistleblower, Richard Halliday. They had to discuss on how they were going to find the rest of the body parts. Um, they were trying to tamper with the evidence, and this is all in the stuff that I have found in my estimation. They were trying to tamper with the evidence and also with the narrative to try to fix Richard as a suicide. It didn't work because they're missing body parts. Um, and it's sick. I know. I know. It's sick. It's either that or just fall apart crying. Um, so they put together, like let's ignore them. But they also use, and I'm going to tell you this, they also got their asymmetric warfare tactics ready to go and their military operations. And I kid you not, because we have the evidence. And the big part of asymmetric warfare tactics and military operations, a big part, and they spend so much money on it, so much, and that is controlling the narrative. And how do they control the narrative? Well, they control the media. Absolutely. They control what is delivered to the media. They use their alley pains. And I told my husband, I said, I feel so bad because I feel like Ellie Payne every time I look at her. Um, and listen to her. She reminds me of that Wicked Witch um, and Oz, right? And oh, what is that? Where the Tin Men and the Lion and yeah. Um, I don't know why, but she just reminded me of that bike scene, whatever. But and I think God was trying to tell me something there. These were very wicked people, and they were trying to control the narrative. And they would release things to me, to try to control the narrative, to try to control our brains, to try to discredit Richard in our estimation. And I kept telling them, I don't care. My son is a young man, right? He's a young man. And young adults have a hard time, every last one of us, going from being a dependent to being um, self sustaining, right? And trying to become an adult. And I said, what is your problems? You know what? I didn't understand what their problem was. I'm like, this, we're talking about, you have over a century or more, a century of dealing with young men and women. You have so much experience. You guys are supposed to be the seasoned leaders, right? And you're acting like this. Uh, you're acting so strange, like a young man does not need to be looked for because you've judged him to be whatever. And everything that you're saying is so insane. And so we debunked everything. We've uncovered everything. We've exposed everything. And we've exposed it to be what it is. It was an asymmetric warfare tactic, op ord. I'm sure they had an order to do it, and it didn't make it right, right? And and it was a military operation against Richard. It was a smear campaign launched with plans behind it. Okay, they planned it, and that's why it went into the military police guard mount. That's why we were receiving some of the strangest text messages, and we're like, who are these people? These strangest text messages that now, and some, there was a couple that did mislead us, but now everything is starting to become clearer and clearer and clearer that these people had connections with Lonnie Hart, had connections with Dallas Hart, had connections with Thomas Kane, had connections with um, with more, with more. And so there is a, it's not like all of a sudden somebody really cares and sends you this it, very important information. And the biggest example of this is the continued retaliation or the continued group that tries to control the narrative. They're very angry and they're very insulting and they seem to know a lot. But if they seem to know a lot, there is a $150,000 reward for finding Richard, right? And but yet that is not their agenda. Their agenda is an asymmetric warfare tactic. It's who they're working for. It's, or what do they have to lose? Um, because were their loved ones or were they at the party? Did Were they involved at um, removing Richard's remains and dismembering it and bringing it to the different locations where they buried him in shallow graves? Um, did they Were they involved um, with this weapon that seems to be custom made weapon? Uh, were they involved in transporting him to Mexico? You know, uh, were they involved in the alibis? Were they involved in the calls? Were they involved in tampering with surveillance footage? Were they involved in other types of narrative handling? Trying to get Richard with, even Marlon Soto did this, trying to make Richard out to be like this big criminal, um, Al Capone. And I'm like, geez, uh, wow, Richard, uh, you're really something else. If you can in a few months, um, with what I know, having no connections into the United States, not speaking any kind of Spanish, no connections in Mexico, um, not really knowing how to drive really well. He might argue that point with me, but he was a very new driver, and then being deployed, and then being on COVID lockdown, that you could accomplish this mega Al Capone thing. I'm like, these people are so insane. They have no logic skills. All they have is an op-ord. They have an order to smear Richard and to control the narrative to make him look bad, to cover up the evils and the crimes of what they're doing. And that's exactly, in my estimation, exactly what happened. And now we have the chief of security of Fort Bliss, the director of emergency services, saying that Fort Bliss is acting outside of the law, that Fort Bliss is criminal, that Fort Bliss is using retaliation as a weapon. And, so we're not alone in that. And of course, we have Nadal Baim um, telling us that the FBI are involved in this. We know that the FBI took over the case of Richard on October 26, 2020, the day that we turned in the CCTV footage from the Dollar General of the FBI employee saying that um, They had found Richard, and he uh, was dead in Juarez. That the FBI were over in Juarez. That's another thing about this whole issue. And that's kind of what happened yesterday with the day before yesterday with the colonel with the health and welfare. He had inside knowledge that he shouldn't have had. Clearly, in his brief, he he admitted that in his brief. And so the conflicts of interest really show a lack of morality, a lack of love for God, a lack of understanding of law and order, what that means, um, or really just not even caring. They don't even care. And they get away with it because the 44 four-star generals that could change everything don't. Don't. And so this is implicating. Okay, who's been implicated in this? Well, of course, Christine Warmouth, right? She's implicated. Um, Austin, the Secretary of Defense, he's implicated, right? The Senate Arms Committee, they're implicated because we wrote them. Veronica Escobar is totally implicated in this. Um, General McConville, General Garrett, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, in this cover up, the covering up of finding the remains of a murdered soldier, the cover up of a murdered soldier. And we have the all the information. And what do we hear from Judge Shook, who issued the warrants? Well, crickets. And then they move him out of Fort Bliss and they call it normal. And I'm like, okay, no, no, this is not normal. Because when you have this kind of case, you flag it. Everybody stays put. We have the lack of a warrant for the illegal search of our home. Think about that. So that implicates the sheriffs. That implicates the deputies. And I think they're nice guys, but they messed up, y'all. They messed up. They searched our home without a warrant. They came around the back. They entered our home. They came around the back. They trespassed. They messed up. Just to put on a show. Just for the kicks. Just to forward this smear campaign on Richard that he's, instead of deceased, that he is a deserter when his body was all chopped up in the ground. And by this time they already had collected it. And there's underground there at Fort Bliss. So with CID being on board, with CPS being on board, with the director of security being on board, with Lolani Hart, that's what they have all in common. They have Lolani Hart in common. Also, they have the command there on board. And, I'm going to have to put up a big chart online for people to understand. the collusion, the level of collusion, and what all we have to, um, and we don't even have to prove anything. You know that. They're the ones that have to prove. Because with 1,098 days, Richard's absolutely assumed murdered. Right? There's nothing, they have nothing. But yet, because we have been made the chief investigators of Richard's case, um, instead of relaxing at night, we've been working diligently on Richard's case, connecting the dots, writing people. We're starting, we're starting to see this thing pretty clear. And I'm going to tell you right now that there is crimes go that Fort Bliss is working outside of the law, and that it is criminal, and that they do use retaliation against people that they don't like, and they judge who they don't like. And at the same time, those same people that they judge, that are soldiers, that are service members, they're not afforded the same level of boldness, I would say, to say that, hey, because they are a veteran, because they are a service member, because we need to look for them. We need to use our resources to get justice for Richard. No, Richard is not afforded that at all. Yet, they can screw around during the day, literally. Literally. Go on little trips and put that in the expense report. They can obstruct justice, deny due process, break federal law, because you know that Tom Kane absolutely broke federal law. And we addressed that today to the new Director of Emergency Services, Patrick Dyer. I believe that's his name, Patrick Dyer. To make sure that our open records request that was ignored illegally, intentionally ignored, because we have a witness, that it didn't get buried, because we believe that there's a huge chance that it got buried, and that the new director will not even know that it exists. So we addressed that today. And, all we've met with is either silence or anger. How dare you want to know about your son? And how dare you tell people what you have found out? And, it's because, see, they have a sweet deal going on. If the JAG is corrupted, right, and compromised, and they might not be compromised with the investment scam or the bribes, or payouts or whatever. They might just be compromised because they are afraid. And we saw that when Tom Kane, when he went into JAG, and they refused to tell the general to even notify that there was the the director of security saying, hey, protocols are not being followed, provisions are not being followed, they're not being done. You have retaliation without a packet, and that retaliation is against a key witness in the missing soldiers case, Richard Halliday, and you don't want to do anything about it. And then the JAG is like, oh, I can't tell that to the general because he might get angry at me. I mean, uh, no, I'm gonna hesitate on that one. Just go away. And then to find out the very person that is doing that is really just trying to cover for themselves because they were part of it. The I absolutely believe this. I absolutely believe that Tom Kane colluded, and I, because he didn't even respond to us. Oh, thank you, I received your email. Not even that. So absolutely he colluded using his power at Park University, using his relationships that he made at Park University, and this includes Leilani Hart. It includes others. And using his position, his very, very important position of being the chief of security of Fort Bliss to, maybe he was blackmailed, because I absolutely believe that he hid surveillance footage, that he damaged or deleted footage, that he didn't give access or gave others access to do harm to the footage, that he promoted the negative stereotype of Richard, the smear campaign on Richard. I know he did that. So I absolutely believe he colluded with Leilani Hart. And nobody's talking about Leilani Hart. Why not? Because she's the one that has the connections with Park University. She's the one that has the connections with within the security of Fort Bliss. She's the one that has the connections within the CID with the law enforcement and also with the AUSAs. She's the one that has the many connections in all of this. And it absolutely has to do with sex and sex cult stuff. And when you are willing, as a mother, in that kind of position, to put in a CID and an FBI report and have it notarized, saying a 7-year-old was, and wait 2 years, just about 2 years, just short of 2 years, before you announce that a 7-year-old was being sexually assaulted in your master bedroom by multiple members of your household, that your son, as a first lieutenant serving right there in ADA on Fort Bliss, was in an incestuous relationships while he was a first lieutenant, and that there was child pornography continuously in long periods of time in your home. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of that report. So if that's going on, then what's going on with her connections with Tom Kane? What's going on with her connections with Park University? What's going on with her connections with LDS? What's going on with her connections in the CID? What's going on with her connections in the AUSA? What's going on in her connections with KTEP and El Paso Matters? And then people don't, and we have all that proof, and people then don't understand. Here comes Richard from Longford, Ireland, Midlands, farmer area, to the United States, to El Paso, to Fort Bliss, the border city, and sees children being assaulted, children being abused, um, books being cooked, funny things going on when it comes to the sale of military equipment, and more. But because Tom Kane has connections within the CPS, maybe that's why our FOIAs have not been answered. Maybe that's how they've got the heads up that Richard was making the CPS complaint. Maybe, I mean, I I'm not crazy to put those things together. Maybe that's why we're getting retaliation and that the DA, Bill Hicks, is not paying attention. And the general's not paying attention because they're afraid. Because they feel like their job is to be corrupted, to collude. That's how I feel. I feel like, we have to conspire, we have to collude that in order to get our retirement, in order to get our payment. Well, what does that tell you? That they feel like their security is with a criminal syndicate. Because that's the choice that they have made. Because we're not a criminal syndicate. We're not. You can look all through. I hid my face. I've been out here every day. Rob hasn't hid his face. He doesn't come on live stream. He has this is uh, this is we've organized ourselves in our family to make it through. We're at 1,098 days. So he has his tasks and I have my tasks, and we're not a criminal syndicate. We just want to know what happened to our son. But they are absolutely what we've uncovered. Because I'm going to tell you another thing that we've uncovered, and this puts, this could put a target on us, and that is these contract deals, building contract deals. Things are not right, y'all. And the contract deals and this plane flying weapons and who knows what, if it's and so that's when you see people getting angry at us instead of answering our requests. When they give you insanity back, I mean, stupid answers back. And sometimes when they have, when they are in the right, they will tell us. And that's what we want. We are ready to hear about our son. But do not tell me the lies. And at that meeting that Task Force 5 Richard Halliday meeting where they weren't even in uniform and there was not even an op board, and you had all those agencies there, and they were colluding behind our back and didn't even have the guts to tell us that they were colluding behind our backs to try to make Richard look like a suicide, try to make him look like um, a some kind of major criminal. They did not even have the guts to question us about that. No, it was, oh, let us hear about Richard. He's so. I mean, this is the IG. She's the IG. This is Lieutenant General Donna Martin. She's the IG. We just sent her something today. I believe we just sent her something today. Um, and that was the most ridiculous, evil, cruel thing I've ever experienced. And that wasn't it. They came to us on all sides. They assigned their FBI informants. They assigned their keyboard warriors to pretend like they were somebody else and say, "Oh, well, this happened and this happened." Y'all, it's so clear. We've matched the names up now. We've found the conflicts of interest. And it now it makes sense. At that time, it was like, what? What are you talking about? Um, do you have evidence? Do you have anything? Where's this? Where is the surveillance footage? Where is it? Because let me tell you, they have hidden surveillance cameras in many, many places where people don't even know. And Tom Kane does. And so does some other people, especially one person at Park University. um, they know. And they can get the drug deals. They could get Richard being abducted and put into a vehicle. They can get others at the scene arguing with Richard. They can get all that surveillance footage. And they withheld that from us. They withheld the fact that they found his remains. They withheld the fact that there was a confession to the murder of Richard. They withheld the identity of Nadal Baim, the FBI employee. They withheld the CPS complaints. They withheld the CID complaints. So in that meeting, all of that had happened. That meeting was November 5th. They could have easily gave us truly a brief on what happened to our son, and they wouldn't have obstructed justice and denied us due process and make us live through this hell that we've been living through. So, if you have any questions now, is there a point of contact for each agency, or does, well, we did contact the new director of security, and I don't want to get anyone confused. Tom Kane has to be told to the public that he was and is in this case the chief of security of Fort Bliss and the director of emergency services, and also part of Park University. And he betrayed the duty um, that he took an oath to. He betrayed that. And so when you betray that oath, and he did a big, I mean, it's bad. Really, at this point, I think he should be arrested. It's that bad because it's many things, and the collusion. I mean, just with the Jack, just uh, it's going to be so interesting. Um, I don't know if that's the right way to say this because you know, it's not going to be a happy scene. I don't know how this is going to be totally exposed and that we get Richard's remains. The decent thing to do. Well, I don't know how they're going to do the decent thing because they're so compromised. And it's so ugly. It's so ugly. It is just cold blooded and ugly. And that's why they're so angry. Because even in their crimes of lust and passion with their whatever orgies, and here, take my wife this day and I'll take your husband this day and you can have my wife that day, and or maybe we'll all just do it together, and then we'll add some children into it, and then we'll add drugs into it, and then we'll deal with some weapons smuggling paperwork after that, cover that up, and then we'll I'll give you a connection for this kind of contract, and or you know that I got a heads up that this contract is going to happen on this, because these are not McDonald workers. Not that I feel like you're better off today if you are a McDonald's worker. These are all uh, professionals that we've entrusted that have um, an an education behind them and all that. These are, and they're not the youngest. These are seasoned professionals, and they're just up to no good. And in my book, they don't deserve to have any more. Matter of fact, I think they should pay restitution to the American people for all the damage they've done. Maybe they need to pay instead of us paying them. Things seem to be very backwards because it's not just Richard, y'all. They've colluded. That how how did they know that they need to have a connection in CPS? How did they know that they needed to have a connection into JAG? How did they know that they needed to be connected with the command? How did they know that they needed to be connected with the AUSAs? How did they know that they needed to have their little cabal in the CID? How did they know this? Because they've been doing it. Richard's not the first. Richard's not the first. So I don't know. God knows. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. It's so sad. It's so sad. I'm more sad than angry. I'm so angry at these people that said they judged Richard, that um, that maligned Richard when they were betraying the trust of their own family, betraying the trust of their oath for their job, their very good job. I think it's a GS 13 or something. Um, you know, they're doing the most rotten things, and they look to a young kid and they judge him to be a scapegoat, or to be unworthy, or to be inhumane. They're just inhumane. They're just cold blooded. And I'm just, like I said yesterday, I it just, the thought came to my mind. Oh my gosh, they're gonna go to hell. They're good. They're just gonna go to hell. And what happens and is that they bring so many with them. It's just a spiral down into the abyss where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. That's what they're doing. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all. And I'm just trying to walk that narrow path, to stay calm and to stay focused, because we are exposing so much here. And I know that, like, watching the Hunter Biden thing, which I haven't been able to really watch as much as I probably need to, but they expose all this stuff, and it's just one level of House of Cards after another level of House of Cards, one tactic after another to try to delay, 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 delay. Delay is their number one game. Oh, I'm not in office right now. I'm on my fifth vacation for the year. Um, oh, I'm not. I'm not at liberty to say, oh, I didn't see the attachment, or, whatever, whatever. So we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you so much, everyone. All 15 agencies that attended the meeting. Yeah, we have connections, and we have a request with the El Paso Police Department. We many, many of them, because we have some things going on behind the scenes that came to light through all of this that we have to revisit, because now what we thought was what was really happening, it was a lie. It was a lie. And so many of our screenshots, I'm so glad we took them. Please, mothers of, and I need to add a post to that, mothers of missing, murdered, and maligned soldiers, um, make sure that you screenshot and you keep a good record of everything, because it's not always what you think it is, and you'll need it to demonstrate the very complex or very organized. They use our money against us, to do psychological warfare against us, to lead us in wrong places and give us a false narrative. And, we have proof of that. So, all right. You would never have believed that we would have to have proof against our own institution that is, we've hired. They work for us, and yet they've gotten so emboldened, so top heavy, so out of touch with their duty, with their oath, that now we are, yeah, that's who we're trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do. All right. Okay, everyone, have a great night. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow.